Hello guys, Rachel here, Archaeologist Gaming. In this video, we're gonna do a tutorial on how to assemble a small form factor build using Tecware Fusion with a Micro-ATX motherboard. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. The Fusion is one of the most budget-friendly case from Tecware. As of recording, the Fusion is the only small form factor case offered by Tecware. But a common misconception when people hear SFF, you need to use an ITX motherboard and SFX power supply, as they don't read all the description thoroughly. But they are wrong. The Fusion can handle both ITX and MATX motherboard, and also SFX and ATX power supply. The first thing to do in building a small form factor PC is to choose your parts. You can go for an MATX motherboard like this B550M Aorus Pro AX, or you can go for an ITX motherboard like this B550i Aorus Pro AX. For your power supply, you can go for an SFX PSU like the FSP Dagger Pro 850W PSU, or an ATX power supply like the Hydro G Pro 850W PSU. Remember, choosing your motherboard and power supply will affect all the parts you can put inside, as they will take space and it will be your basis for your other parts. Now for the graphics card, you can choose between a single, dual, or tri-fan. An example of a dual fan is the Power Color Fighter RX 6600, and for the tri-fan is the Gigabyte 1660 Super. For the cooler, you can choose an air cooler or an AIO, but it depends on the previous parts you choose. Careful planning and research are the key here in building an SFF system unit. As I said earlier, in this tutorial, I will show you how to build using a Micro-ATX motherboard inside the Tecware Fusion with an SFX power supply. The second thing I do when I build a system unit is that I remove all the panels of the case. With this, I can see all the possible space and where to route my cables. Next, let's prepare the components. For the motherboard, I will be using Gigabyte's P550M Aorus Pro AX. For the CPU, I will be using the Ryzen 5 5600X processor. And for the memory modules, I will be using Team Group's T-Force Delta RGB 8x2 3600MHz kit. For my storage, I will be only using one M.2 NVMe SSD, the WD Black SN850 1TB Gen 4 M.2 NVMe SSD. I'm using this so I can have less cables inside the case. Next, I will change the position of the PSU bracket because I will be using a Micro-ATX motherboard, so it needs space. So by moving it to the front, you can have ample space for the motherboard. Before installing it, I will attach the power supply to the PSU bracket first. For the power supply, I will be using an FSP Dagger Pro 850W SFX power supply. If you have big hands like me, then you should probably attach the needed cables to the power supply, so it will be easy for you to manage it. Once the power supply is already attached to the bracket, I can now place and secure it on the front. Next, place the motherboard inside the case and align it to the standoffs. Tighten the screws to the number of standoffs needed for your motherboard. The next thing I do is to attach all the needed front I/O cables before installing the components. As you can see, the space is limited and tight, so it's much better to route your I/O cables right now. Once done, you can connect your power cables to your motherboard, both the CPU and 24-pin connector. During this time, it's much better to know where you want to route your cables, or use a cable tie to shorten the length and secure the cable, so you will have enough space left inside the case. Cable management will really take a lot of time, especially you are OC on the aesthetics of your system unit or rig. Being OC is also helpful, especially if you want an ample space so that there is a right amount of air going through your case. Now you will notice, I didn't insert the brackets for the cooler during the installation of the components on the motherboard. The reason is, I'm not sure yet what cooler will fit with this configuration. but I decided to use an air cooler, which is the Deepcool AS500. Sadly, this is the only air cooler I have and it's taut. That's why I can close the front side panel. You must know that the stock cooler for the 5600X is not enough cooling for the CPU, so an aftermarket cooler is your only choice. If you want to use an AIO in this configuration, it's better to use 120mm AIO. Lastly, you can now insert your graphics card. I will be using the PowerColor Fighter RX 6600. Also, you can try to route your BGA cables so it will not take a lot of space. Now, you already built a small form factor system unit that you can easily bring and enjoy for LAN parties with your friends. But remember, we are still on a pandemic, so practice social distancing. Let's insert some B-rolls to showcase the finished build. In conclusion, there are pros and cons when you try to assemble a Micro-ATX motherboard inside the Tecware Fusion. You will be limited to the size of your GPU and your AIO, so proper research is really needed when you want to try one. ITX motherboard is a good choice, but it is expensive. Compared to a mid-tower, the total cost is more than that when you are trying a small form factor build. And that's how I built a Micro-ATX motherboard inside the Tecware Fusion case. I hope this video is informational for you. For more videos, click on the subscribe button and follow my Facebook page. And see you in the next video.